Hello, everyone. I am being guided to continue basically with the, I don't want to know what quite to call it, the stream of what I began with the whole timeline thing. And most especially some of the videos I've made recently. These are for the public because I feel it's very important and shouldn't just be kept in the portal. So I'm continuing with this by going back to some information that I wrote in 1990 and then put into a video format for the portal about 3 years ago. I'm repeating it because I want to read it and discuss it from the current perspective. Things are happening so fast on this planet right now that 3 years ago is ancient history. So I'm looking at it from this more current perspective and tying it in to some of the videos I've made recently. I will be placing all of these videos in a playlist on YouTube so you have them all accessible in one group. And as I add to them, I will add into that playlist. So we go back now to 1990, and I'm reading to you from that material that is in Temple Doors Issue 3, 1990, for those of you in the portal who have access to the actual written publications. The following information was set down on the 15th of June, 1990, the day after I had received it in the form of pure energy while listening to the music of Atlantis Angelus by Patrick Bernhardt. In order to more fully comprehend this material, the following preface is given. Our known history books tell us that Zarathustra, more commonly known as Zoroaster, was a Persian prophet and magician who lived either 660 to 583 BC or 570 to 500 BC. Some documentation gives 1400 to 1200 BC. His followers, the Zoroastrians, are seen as worshippers of divinity through the symbol of eternal fires. For the few Zoroastrians left in the world today, mostly in India, this is true. However, the religion of Zoroastrianism has been greatly diluted since the age of its birthing. While sacred fire always played a major role in the rituals of this religion, its principles are founded in the conceptualization of the molten fire of the forge, wherein the Excalibur and Grail find their spirit origins. According to Thoth and other esoteric sources, Zarathustra, Zoroaster were three separate incarnations of the same soul, or more appropriately, souls. Each person contained a layering of quite a lineage of souls, the same layering present in all three incarnations, although the great spiritual power lay with the first, Zarathustra. By the age of the Zoroasters, the etheric bonding of the planet was not stable enough to hold the full force of the Zarathustrian lords. These lords are spoken of in the preceding message of Thoth. It is in greater part this first cycle, Zarathustra, that the message addresses. Now, I'm a little puzzled because it's saying here, according to Thoth and other esoteric sources, Zarathustra and Zoroaster were three separate incarnations. Well, he's listing two here, so I'm not quite sure about that. Maybe it will be revealed as we read on. The book of, okay, let me see. I lost my place, of course. As I said, these lords are spoken of in the preceding message of Thoth. it is in the greater part this first cycle of Zarathustra that the message addresses. The book of the Zarathustrian lords was written in only one copy by the hand of Zarathustra as he opened his being to the archangel Sha'Maia. This copy, Thoth tells me, was written and kept by the Oloi, Oloai, the inner mystery temple of Zarathustra, near the Persian bottomless lake of Takht-Isuliman, by the rim of which the city of the royal fire once reclined. Where this city once stood now remains only ancient ruins, but the cavern complex of Oloi, hollowed into the nearby, or hollowed into the nearby mountains, retains the eternal fires and spiritual promise of things to come. According to Thoth, the innermost truths of Zarathustra were contained within the Oloi, which is the name not only of the inner temple as a physical place, but as a spiritual habitation alive within the priests and priestesses of that place. Therefore, Oloi identifies the grouping of souls as well as their inner temple. The outer manifestations of the religion did not come about until the period of the Zoroasters, being considerably watered down for the peoples of the time. The work of the Oloi was to build the spiritual power matrix for future sacred events of major consequence, beginning with the birth, life, and death of Jesus Christ. This spiritual power matrix was not to be in the form of the belief structure of the masses, but as an actual grid of being, fortifying the natural spirit to crystallic entity of the earth. Within the cavern complex, this infusion could manifest, grow, and await as its birth age. There are several birthing points for this energy, many of which are yet to come. Throughout the Zoroastrian religion, it is taught that the Zoroaster was given spiritual insight as to the nature of good and evil, each in his vision having come from distinctly separate origins. Evil did not come from good, nor did good emerge from evil. Thoth relates that Zarathustra and the lords, quote unquote, of his multi-leveled embodiment came to earth as foot soldiers of a divine command of archangels to confront and destroy evil in the name of righteousness. This was and still is to be accomplished through direct confrontation at specific points in the space-time continuum. I accent these points because if we look at this right here, even though the time I wrote this, I was not really into the timeline thing. Yes, it was mentioned to me here and there in various ways by Thoth. Now, this is 1990, remember, before it all became so popular now with, the secret space program and blah, 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 and all of this, and the timelines and the timelines and the timelines. But in those days, there was no internet. There was no anything. There was just me and Thoth, and as far as I was concerned. And he did bring these things up, but little bits, little here and there. So now I look at this now and I see when I read this sentence, this was and still is to be accomplished through direct confrontation at specific points in the space-time continuum. This means a lot more to me now than it did when I wrote it. In the book of the Zarathustrian lords, Zarathustra, now this is purely from Thoth. This is not historical knowledge, in our current time, but Thoth states that there's this book called Zarathustra. The angelic magical formula is given for the complete victory of the light in the battling of the dark forces. I will now allow Thoth to continue from here. Note, passages in italics, well, you won't know what that is, and quotes are from the lost Zarathustra as directly given to me by Thoth. So when I get to these italic passages, I will just say, what will I say? Book of Zarathustra or something. I don't know. When I get to it, I'll figure it out. But you'll know where the passage is. Okay, so Thoth. Understand that evil is not merely a corruption of good. While the latter is not good, it is not evil. It is ignorance hiding within its own shadow. Evil comes from the power of Satan. Satan is the delusion of Lucifer, who in himself is not evil, but fallen or misplaced within the hierarchies of light. He is like unto a withered limb that finds animation now only in the cancerous tumor of its marrow. This cancer within that feeds from forgotten light and bleeds eternal night is embodied within the conceptual entity known as Satan. Now, he uses the term conceptual entity. He's taking a word that we have, that we identify with bad stuff, evil, Lucifer and Satan. And he's using these words, these names, these identifications, and he's sorting them out for us in regard to the truth. So we can find Satan used in other ways. And it doesn't necessarily mean that those other ways are wrong, because we're dealing with the vocabulary of earth. Thoth is using the vocabulary of earth in these two terms, but he's defining them in a more universal concept, way of looking at it, a universal way of looking at it. I just wanted to qualify that. Surely satanic forces blossom from the budding vine of ignorance, even as it preys at the root of the tree that gives it life. But evil keeps its own counsel. It is not from the fruit of any vine, for no living thing, nor even ignorance, is a member of its body. It is merely a delusion of existence, for it casts no shadow. This is at the heart of the purpose of the emergence of the Zarathustrian lords. In identifying the name of the beast, i.e. the mathematics incorporated into its language consciousness, so the creature can be destroyed. While corruption as a puppet of evil must be transmuted, the creature or beast of evil must be utterly dismantled, for it is not an energy faculty of spirit, nor has it ever been in any form. It is not a being or state of being, but an outpouring of the mechanism of Satan. As a mechanism, Satan is not a consciousness, as is the host entity, Lucifer. And I'm saying in parentheses, or he's saying in parentheses, to be sure, in his fallen state, Lucifer radiates the retrograde energies of evil, but he of himself, as an angel of the Lord, is redeemable. However, there are many evil entities which are constructed from this mechanism, this satanic mechanism. And we could now, I have to go back for a moment. The word archon was not in my headspace when I wrote this, nor did Thoth introduce it to me. I read about it more recently, just a few years ago, and I said, well, what is this archon stuff? And I went to Thoth about it. And that's when he talked about the archon cloud, and he started incorporating the word archon in my vocabulary, because it's like, oh, okay, she's using the word archon now. She wants to know about it, and it's out there in the planet. So we'll just take archon and we'll incorporate it in this whole construct of true cosmic understanding. And that's when he told about the archonic cloud and all of that. Okay, so, however, there are many evil entities which are constructed from this satanic mechanism. We could say archonic mechanism to some extent, but I'm not sure, because the archonic cloud is one thing, the satanic mechanism is another, but they're closely related, because the archonic cloud infuses into personalities and beings, animating them for specific satanic mechanistic work. So you see how it kind of relates? Yes, very strongly relates, but they're different aspects of the whole thing, of the dynamic. Okay, so let me do the sentence again, because I keep interrupting myself. However, there are many evil entities which are constructed from this mechanism, and without which would not exist. These entities, as powerful as they appear, and indeed are under advantageous circumstances, are but holographs of the Satanic machine. The book of the let me try that again. The book of the Zarathustrian lords, given through the man Zarathustra via his multi-entity being by the archangel Samael, is both a text of revelations and prophecy and a doctrine of angelic magic. Angelic magic differs from earth magic in that it contains the asterisms of the creative logos, which organize to form the aggregation of both spirit and matter in the universes. This could be compared to the zeros and ones that in specific sequences transfer music to a laser disc through a digitalized beam of light, while the asterisms of angelic magic are far more complex and infinitely greater in profundity. This is a simplistic comparison. And then I say, please define, I ask Thoth to please define asterisms. And Thoth is saying, the higher definition of light particles within the atomic consciousness, which acts as a bridge linking the atomic level with the superatomic or sublime states. The Hebrew yod flames, which form their sacred alphabet, stem from asterimic conjunctos, or rather alchemical unity of atomic particles with divine reason, all-knowing, divine mind, etc. When the first atomic bomb was exploded, this created a new branch of asterisms, mutants, more or less, of the originals. These mutants formed windows in the astral plane, which through a greater acceleration of Earth consciousness toward the center of the universe is manifested. Let me read that again because I read it poorly. These mutant forms, can't do it. These mutants formed windows in the astral plane through which a greater acceleration of Earth consciousness toward the center of the universe is manifested. Had to pause after that one. This is much like a spiritual seeker taking peyote, or peyote is it called, to receive his visions of ultimate spiritual conjuncto. It is not a product of gradual awakening through one's own spiritual entity, but an artificial response to matter stimulus. Thus, it impedes the true purpose of the initial seeking. The craving of drugs by many individuals at this time is a direct result of karma colliding headlong with these accelerating windows. So in other words, when the bomb went poof, it started up this acceleration on certain levels that really messed us up further. To continue with the book of the Zarathustrian lords, now this is a quote from that book, and out of the bitter ochre of his fainted brow, Ahriman, Satan, dabbed the vowels of his heated breath upon their palates, and they spat his verse as a chaos from the abyss of madness. End of quotes. So the followers of Satan garbled their chants into the ethers and confused them who knew not the hymns of the Most High. And yet in the midst of their fury, a shining host descended from the earth. This being sublime was to incarnate his light into the Master Yeshua, or Jesus. Now, at the time I wrote this, I didn't know there were two Jesuses. By that I don't mean two Jesuses. No. Two souls of Jesus, the Assyrian soul, or what I was also calling, I think, I can't remember now, but now I'm calling it the Assyrian soul, and then the pure soul of Jesus. So I didn't know that. So I don't know which soul he's talking about here, but probably both. Then another quote from the Zarathustrian Lord book. A coming song approaches, yea, from the clouds of joy, for he who goeth not before the Lamb comes surely upon the grassy fields thereafter. Unquote. This passage is in reference to the emissaries preceding the Christos, making way for his presence in the life wave of earth and the new earth of those who come after him, who now before his passing found abundance stretched out before the. No, let me say that again. This passage is in reference to the emissaries preceding the Christos, making way for his presence in the life wave of the earth and the new earth of those who come after him, who now, because of his passing, found abundance stretched out before them. Yet in the evidence of things seen, this has not come to pass, for much travail is still with the earth. Such prophecies speak of those things not revealed to the flesh, hidden from the senses, presented only to those initiates who seek through the Spirit. But the time is soon approaching in which, and now he quotes from the book again, the rapture of the age shall enfold the number in man, and his glory will be upon him. Unquote. I have to say that probably this text that was given to me, this particular issue, may be the most important revelation that I've ever received. I didn't realize it at the time. I just thought, wow, this is pretty cool. But now as I read it, even when I read it 3 years ago, it didn't hit me like it's hitting me now. That's how fast things are going. From the pages of the book of the Zarathustrian lords, the full understanding of the Antichrist is given. This is still Thoth narrating this, but he's quoting now from the Zarathustrian lords. Therein shall he dwell, in the midst of the foundation, a whirlwind of terrible might. From the doctrine of Ahriman will man forfeit his weights and measures upon the scales of perfection, until the vanquishing of the servant of the intrepid is accomplished. Unquote. The serpent of the intrepid, according to Thoth, is the Antichrist, the bold ego without soul, who is merely a shell from the service of the holographic powers of Satan or Ahriman. The forfeiting of his weights and measures are balances of human will and destiny that will not be able to function within the spectrum of the satanic might. And now he quotes again from the book. I'm just going to call it the book. For the creature of his power is a god of dust, from whence decay issues forth. Long are the days of his lusting, lamentation and renting of the curtain of the holy is forborne. Well, I'm going to have to do that again. This is really hard to read. Long are the days of his lusting. Lamentation and renting of the curtain of the holy is forborne upon the children of the star, Israel, until all who have done him service are brought before the pillar of consciousness. Unquote. The truth of these words is the consequence of evil, that it must run its gauntlet before it can be quelled. There is a cycle that once begun must be completed. If it were not closed, like unto a circle, it would escape the gravity of its center to devour all. Thus, the law of the universe allows it to spin down as an atomic particle decays. From this action, it closes the causal eclipse about the center of its force. It is then self-contained. Yet each of these eclipses sends one tiny bit of matter or essence out into the world to create a new spin. These are those who have done him service, not individual entities, but the particles of decay they carry. Because this passage refers to the children of the star, it is addressing specifically the coming of the Antichrist in Hitler. It had also manifest to a lesser degree within Napoleon. And I also feel there may be more to this that Thoth is not quite giving me, or it was giving me at that time. But I'd like to address that all these little particles, you say, well, it never ends because another particle spins and another particle spins, and it just goes on. You have to keep allowing the particles to spin down. This was not addressed here, but Thoth is saying to me that these little bitty particles, they have to reach a certain level of acceleration before they become one that has to spin, go its cycle and spin down. They will die like little pops in the wind if the bigger one is, it's like little sperm going toward the egg. Only one makes it. It's kind of like that, and that even that one won't make it if all is put into place. The forces that be, the gods of light, whatever you want to call it, are trying. They're keeping these little particles from accelerating, and they're the one that's just about to make it. It's brought to a conclusion quickly before it makes it to the point where it has to accelerate its whole span. It's a very complex subject. Thoth is saying that's why he didn't address it in this text. It could be a whole, book unto itself, but it's not as ominous as it might seem in just thinking about it within the context of this, what he's writing here. And I'll just leave it at that for now. The book prophesies its own destruction in this passage. By the hand of the deformed one shall these words pass away, yet shall the time come for the wonder of their missive, I've misspelled it, it's not massive, it's missive, to appear upon the stone. Yet shall the time come for the wonder of its missive to appear upon the stone. Unquote. And Thoth says, the deformed one is a twofold entity. Its greater meaning is the deforming or distorting of sacred symbols in order to infuse them with black powers. But it also refers to a man whose name was Hilliard, who last possessed the Zerum Octaba. Hilliard was an alchemist in the 9th century who labored under a physical deformity. His achievement of self-mastery was dimmed by his indecisive allegiance. Often tempted to serve the darkness, he was also drawn to the light. Because he was unable to discern his true path, he was not a full initiate of the knowledges empowering the book, and thus when he opened it, the entire text turned to powder in his hands. The book further reveals that his words shall appear in the future, so it is being fulfilled in part at this moment. Oh, in me writing this right now, or in 1990. The stone is the philosopher's stone. And we have a quote here from Parzival, Wolfram von Esenbach. Hear now how those who are called to the grail are made known. On the stone round the edge appears letters inscribed, giving the name and the lineage of each one, maid or boy, who is to make a blessed journey. No one needs to rub out the inscription, for once he has read the name, it fades before his eyes. Well, yeah, okay, I'm not going to go there. So anyway, so we continue with Thoth talking about this book. In the book is written the names of the 5 race spirits who have yet to manifest their streaming upon the earth. From these race spirits shall come the new races, bringing the genetic fourfold helixes into the earth's domain. I'm turning a page here, everyone. Since the time of the fall, man contains only a twofold helix, which stays him from receipt of the complete being. Through the metatronic spiral of the light molecule, the imstra, and we all know about that, or those of you who have followed my work, begins this process of receipt. Once accomplished, the 5 race spirits, or the archi, will come into the evolutionary field of Earth's manifesting plane. These archi are also the first race spirits, only they return as higher evolutions of their former revealed to the Earth natures. Thus they are meta-archi. The meta-archi cause the asterism's cohesion of the light molecule. And now he quotes again from the book. The alphabet, meta-archi, stretch out their fineness of silks and spin a mudra of totality. From the seed light, they gather all the signs into one shining element, bared to the forge of the sun, bathed in the pearls of the moon. Lo, the scroll of golden beams is written with the quills of their burnishing might and set into the living pulse of the mother realm. Unquote. Understanding the nature of the light molecule embroiders its pattern or passage upon the heart of the initiate. This understanding becomes an embodiment of spiritual knowing, a nation of consciousness which acts as one entity of will. In this contemplation, spiritual consciousness becomes guardian spirits, of a high order, emanating from individual spiritualized egos who gather as signs of one shining element to form what the Zarathustrian book calls genius. Quote, and the genius of each nation shall come from the center of the planet, visiting unto the tribal lords, who shall then become their genius and take upon themselves the tribulum, the grail cup, the cup of the molten sea. This shall consume unto their flesh and burn away that which is forsaken of spirit, receding into their hearts the inscription of fire. Unquote. This passage foretells the effect of the light molecule upon the tribal lords, whose persons in power upon the planet, those persons in power upon the planet, who will be ready to accept the initiation of the grail, the incorporation of the light molecule into the body, by becoming their genius. The genius comes from the center of the planet, for it is part of the nature world. It is the corporate body of spiritualized egos who have gathered their signs from the Holy of Holies at the center of the earth, the world's creative matrix. As a genius is formed, so it offers its being to an incarnated tribal lord, and thus this spiritualized ego-created being can become a human being through a human who is ready to receive the genius consciousness. Then we have another quote from the book. Take him, the genius, into your heart, for there lodges an eternal angel to bless and receive him in your name. Unquote. Now, obviously, when he's speaking about the tribal lords, he's not talking about the elite. I don't think. I can't imagine the elite just turning around and coming to Jesus, so to speak. So I'm not sure who these tribal lords are as I'm reading this right now. It may come to me as we go along. They're not the culture holders, because the culture holders are not embodied, at least when they become culture holders, they aren't. So I'm not sure. Okay. So then he quotes again. No, he doesn't quote again. Wait a minute. Here we go. He's saying, in the book of the Zarathustrian Lords, the genius is the single most important vehicle in the completion of victory over evil. For an incarnated soul who has received her genius is the one form of being who can utterly destroy the beast. Wow. Let me read that again. In the book of the Zarathustrian Lords, the genius is the single most important vehicle in the completion of victory over evil. For an incarnated soul who has received her genius is the one form of being, who can utterly destroy the beast. Now he quotes again from the book. The talisman of the Master is the blood covenant. It is his suffrage of the vine, from whence the people receive their renewing grace. He who bears the talisman for all shall wear the robe of crimson and the robe of purple. From his veins the fountain is sustained, even when the well is dry. Now, that's the end of the quote, and Thoth is saying, the talisman of the Master is again an aspect of the Grail, as it becomes a votive of the blood covenant, that sacred blood within all peoples of the earth, which are in most instances, excluding certain advanced individuals, yet to be separated from the tinctures of defilement brought about in the fall from grace. Now here we're getting into, I'm just going to stop for just a minute. Later in 1994, 5, something like that, I wrote the other article that I consider one of the most important I ever wrote, received, transmission, whatever, on the white road and the red road, the blood path and the white path. So keep that in mind, those of you who are familiar with it, and I've said it so much you probably are, as I continue to read here, because I didn't know about that when I was writing, when Thoth was giving me this. Okay, so let's go back and say, the blood covenant is that sacred blood within all peoples of the earth, which are in most instances, excluding certain advanced individuals, yet to be separated from the tinctures of defilement brought about in the fall from grace. It is the Christ in Jesus who bore the talisman for all. It was Jesus who wore both the crimson robe of the outrushing blood and the purple robe of the inrushing blood. The outrushing is the blood essence of expansion, activity, and often karmic attachment and suffering. The inrushing blood is the vehicle of the chemical blood coagulation that sustains the grail consciousness within the atomic nature. It is the preservation and exaltation of spirit and matter. So when the white path inrushes into the blood path, it creates the purple robe. Okay, we could think about it like that. Quite literally, through the blood of the Master Jesus, the tribal lord of the first order, the genius was accepted on an etheric level for the entire human evolution. This is the fountain that sustains even when the individualized wells are dry. The essence of this grace factor, that's the white path, is to be found in the seemingly simplistic dogma, Jesus Christ died for our sins. As a symbol of this understanding, the colors of Zarathustra's Olai are crimson and purple. Going to pause just a moment, not pause the tape, but need to just sip some water. Shows you how old I am when I call it a tape. Okay. So now we go to quoting the book again. He who places himself upon the threshold of the talisman's temple beholds the holy terrible, capital holy, capital terrible. He is tried and made worthy to sit upon the seat of the perilous crossing, unquote. Herein lies the identity of the Grail Knight Parsifal, who sits upon the seat of the siege perilous, which is the threshold to the Grail Castle. The first try is quite jolting experience for him because although he is destined to sit there, he is not acting from spirit, but from the will of the ego. His second attempt, after having canonized, glorified his will through the service to the Grail, is successful. This perilous seat is the vehicle of transportation to the individual's dweller of the threshold. In the Olai chambers of Zarathustra's inner temple, there is a dark green meteor stone in the center of a disc set into the floor. Through this magical apparatus, one is confronted with the Holy Terrible, the dweller of the threshold. Here the initiate must confront his innermost fears and release these apparitions of dispirited ego before he or she can proceed into the next gradient of the spiritual questing. When the seeker is victorious over his modem of horror within, the disc around the stone turns to alchemical gold, allowing him passage through the veil. Going back to quote from the book again. In the fortress of the horde will he be contained. That parable of Ahriman's will, who, by the basest of means, did live and die. Within the sealed catacomb of Vespar, his duplicity doth linger, trapped in the vault of time. So no hand removes the clasp, nor encroaches upon the seal, the evil cannot be fulfilled. Unquote. Within a fortress in this age is contained the materialized body double in the harmonic shadow of Adolf Hitler. Unlike the Ka of Christ released in 1986 from the Pyramid of Giza, this double is not an etheric double. It is instead the sum total of lesser nature that animated the Hitler being. This being no longer contained a soul as the term is understood. but instead was a fragmented consciousness of race memory only. There's a lot to that. I'm not going to go into it. Upon which the Ahrimanic force could write its doctrine and animate to perform its will, wherein the Christ Ka dwelt within the pyramid for the purpose of infusing the planet through the power point of that structure. The double of Hitler is sealed away from release back into the force field of the Antichrist. It is in effect being kept from activity. Without this layer of fragmentation, the Antichrist cannot become fully empowered once again. So that's the importance of Hitler here. We don't want to make Hitler out to be some kind of an anti-God. But we're talking about energies here, dynamics of the vessel that Hitler held and what became of it and why it's so important, because it was the last one that came to a certain stage of fulfillment, and it has to be ignited with the next stage before the next stage can surpass that stage of fulfillment. So it's being held in that catacomb, so to speak. The current host for this emissary must first reclaim the Ahrimanic shadow held hostage within the catacomb of Vespar. The plan and fulfillment of the mission to contain the beast was accomplished by the remaining Olai of the Zarathustra through the order of the labyrinth. While the physical body of Adolf Hitler was consumed by fire, and they say he went to Peru or wherever it was, I don't remember, and that the body in the pit was not his. It may not have been, but wherever he died or however he died, I don't know. But Thoth is saying that it was consumed by fire, which would make sense, even if it wasn't that body double in the pit outside the Rosteig or wherever. And I kind of feel it may not have been. They would have probably burned it when he did die. Anyway, let's go on with this. I don't want to get into Hitler stuff. While the physical body of Adolf Hitler was consumed by fire, the Ahrimanic entity harbored within the body membrane had been discharged before death through a magical process given in the Zurum Octava and manifested in a semi-physical form or clone within an especially designed and alchemically constructed conductive tomb. The guards of the tomb of the beast are from among the remnant Olai. However, the tomb protects itself, as no source can penetrate its alchemy other than those initiated to it. Only the archangel stone beneath the sarcophagus of Torhana within the Tor Hill can break the seal on the tomb of the beast. This crystal of light cannot be touched by evil so long as it is lodged in this sacred place, for it is flamed by the living heart of a feminine goddess high initiate, whose blood holds the properties of the sapphire. And she's not saying here, and I know I must have known it by then. Maybe I didn't. But Torhana was previously an incarnate, previously or after that. I can't remember sequence here, but the soul of the Virgin Mary. Okay, so let's continue here. Torhana's heart, still living in its suspended state, is the grail in matter, containing the elixir of the lapis, the sapphire blood. It is from Torhana's lineage that the grail blood flows through the Egyptian pharaonic house of Akhenaten and the Hebrew house of David, met at this crucible by the Celtic power of Atlantis. These are powerful blood forces when fully awakened to spirit, as they were and are in Torhana. In her bosom is the seed of the race spirits of Zarathustra. I cannot say that. Zarathustra. It's a real tongue twister. She was and is the forebearer of Yeshua ben Joseph, Jesus, and Merlin. So she was the forebearer of both. Torhana is the ultimate grail cup in a living sense of the grail that is still with us physically on the earth. It is difficult then to realize the power of the grail consciousness within the chamber. No, is it difficult then to realize the power of the grail consciousness within the chamber of Torhana? Only a Christed soul could dare enter this vortex of spiritual light. Yet it is the stone of the archangel that is the key to the lock of the vaulted beast, for within its mathematics is contained the numerics of releasing all matter-bound energies, both good and evil. so much of this plays like, a really good David Spielberg movie or something. And there's a part of me, it's always been there. It goes, I don't know. I mean, this sounds pretty much like movie stuff. But I'm being more and more reconciled to the fact that the movie stuff came from it. That is, the play of energies, experiences, human drama, all of that is real. And people like Spielberg and others take it and just amp it up and make a story out of it. And it plays because it has a real basis to it. So that, and of course, also, we have to look at it from the perspective of quantum mechanics and what this is relaying to us about quantum mechanics as well. So there's two sides to that coin. To continue with both, as the fulcrum messenger, oh boy, this is going into other stuff. Well, anyway, as the fulcrum messenger, Merkrael, who is an archangel, according to Thoth, retrieves the codes within the 24 crystals. So Michael, the defending archangel, will accept the 25th crystal of light into his bosom, recalibrating and encoding of this lost divinity within the living lights. Until this is accomplished, the dark emissaries will continue to seek a way to gain the archangel stone for the present Antichrist host, and thus full empowerment of his vehicle via the transmission of the harmonic double within the sealed vault of the fortress. Now, I really have to say, it's not like they're trying to tunnel into the chamber. We're talking about energies, vibration, frequency. The stone is a frequency. It makes some form manifest physically in sight as a crystal, but it's not like they have to go physically grab the crystal and run out from under Torhana. This is all energy and frequency. Yes, it has physical locale, but it's much more to it than that. I just want to stress that. Okay. Okay, let me see. What is this here? I want to see if I'm quoting from something that I don't need to read the full thing from, or what, because I want to keep this as short as possible. I'm going to put this on hold for a moment, and let me just see if it's necessary for me to read this or not in the context of what I'm bringing forth now. Well, even though it's a bit long, I'm going to read it. I'm being guided that it is important. And this is a quote from, let me tell you in advance, it's excerpted from the Essene teachings of Zarathustra by Edmund Bordeaux, oh my gosh, Zekely. So this is a quote from that book that I just tried to tell you about. The contradiction regarding the age in which Zoroaster lived disappears when dialectical research shows that there was not one but three Zoroasters. The historical reality is quite simple. The first of the three Zoroasters was a Sumerian philosopher living some 7,000 years ago, who made a synthesis of the great heliothetic traditions which reached their highest point of development in Sumerian civilization. The second teacher of the same name was an Iranian who compiled an encyclopedia of all these traditions that survived from the earlier Sumerian civilization. Information concerning these traditions is comparatively abundant, partly due to the Sumerians' habit of writing, or more correctly engraving, their laws and annals in cuneiform hieroglyphs on quasi-indestructible tablets. Zoroaster III was a Median priest who lived somewhat less than 3,000 years ago and revived the half-forgotten teachings of his predecessor. The Zoroastrian doctrine connects every manifestation of man with all the forces of nature and the cosmos. This is reflected in the true meaning of Avesta. In the ancient Zend language, it means the book of life. According to Zoroaster, men and trees and brethren are brethren and cannot live and develop fully without one another. He asserts that the tree is the most perfect form of life in the vegetable kingdom, and that likewise the highest degree of evolution attained in the animal kingdom is represented by man. I'm going to stop just a moment because many years later, 2000, 11, I guess, or 2012, I was given by Thoth something called the Truth of Trees, and it's part of the iThoth series in the portal, but it kind of, it lines up with this. Okay, our life is not determined by what we think, say, or do, but also and in greater degree by the thoughts, words, deeds, and inventions of the long line of our ancestors, representing the sum of all preceding generations whose traditions form the basis of our present life. The totality of the riches transmitted to us by previous generations, which today we term culture, is expressed in the Avestas by the words light of life. Thus, this light, declares Zoroaster, comes to us continually from the most distant ages, making it possible for us to possess the total wisdom and experience of previous generations without the need to try again for ourselves what they have already tried and proved right in the course of thousands of years. Now, I have a little asterisk there, and this asterisk goes back to me. And what I'm saying back in 1990 was, I see in this belief the true understanding of the Zarathustrian lords, not only incarnating group souls, but the actual energy of continuing spiritual syntropy within the hub of the Zarathustrian archetype, that very light of life that connects all being through time. Okay, let me continue now back to the quote from this text, of the text of the Essene teachings of Zarathustra. This light declares, no, I read that, I'm sorry. The elevation of the Zoroastrian teaching may well conclude, I'm going to turn a page here, with a consideration of what, let me make sure, did I, oh my gosh, yes I did, okay, I'm sorry. I thought maybe I had forgotten to turn the recorder back on, I was freaking out. Okay, let me do that again. The evaluation of the Zoroastrian teaching may well conclude with consideration of what Zoroastrianism has to offer contemporary man. It may sound paradoxical, but for us, its greatest value lies in one of its most specific tenets, the reality of evil. According to Zoroaster, we shall find two opposed and warring forces, good and evil, in every manifestation and form of life, whether vegetable, animal, human, collective, earthly, or cosmic. Harmful results will always follow deviation from the good. If, for instance, we neglect to cultivate the topsoil and do not return it to all the values we have drawn from it, then the soil will be impoverished. Plants and animals will suffer deficiency, and human beings will become sick. If we use inferior foods, our vitality will be impaired. If we cut down our trees without replacing them, the good soil will be lost, the deserts will be created, and the climate will be worsened. But more than that, I might add, trees are our pathway to the lotus reality and the connection to that which we received from that. I'm not saying it's the only path, but it's a very, very important one. It's a guardian path of that essentiality. Okay, to return to this, quote, to deviate from our natural code of life, good thoughts, good words, good deeds, means a loss of our mental, moral, and collective equilibrium. In every manifestation of life, we shall find that there is both good and evil, and that we always have to choose between the two. We have thus to increase either universal harmony or universal discord. We cannot remain neutral. Zoroastrianism adopts a dynamic attitude of eternal vigilance, which will prevent even the appearance of evil, and if evil has crept in, will fight and destroy it. Demosthenes knew that this was a heroic, and lifelong task, that the forces of evil have great power in ourselves and society, on the planet, and throughout the universe. But he also knew that in this glorious and unceasing struggle, he had at his disposal a great arsenal in the shape of all the sources of energy, harmony, and knowledge to be found in mankind, nature, and in the cosmos. According to Zoroaster, man is living in an age when evil is very powerful in every field of existence, through its strength though its strength is progressively growing less, and that of good growing greater. In the language of the Avestas, there will come the complete destruction of the kingdom of darkness of Arma, and the final era of the kingdom of Ormuzd. This philosophy is summed up in the well-known lines of the Avestas, quote, "Evil exists not, only the past. The past is past, the present is a moment, the future is all." And that's a complete end of quotes from these scene teachings of Zarathustra. So now another drink of water, and we shall continue. One of the most spiritually insightful and powerful book ever written in modern times is The Spear of Destiny by Trevor Ravenscroft. At this point, I think it's me talking, not the, well, it's kind of hard to tell, isn't it? But, I don't know. We'll just read it. One of the most important, most spiritually insightful and powerful books ever written in modern times is The Spear of Destiny by Trevor Ravenscroft. In writing this book, Mr. Ravenscroft was fulfilling the intent of Dr. Walter Johannes Stein, and I quote here, a Vienna-born scientist and doctor of philosophy who acted during World War II as a confidential advisor to Sir Winston Churchill regarding the minds and motivations of Adolf Hitler and the leading members of the Nazi Party, unquote. According to Ravenscroft, just 3 days after Dr. Stein decided to write his book, he died of a heart attack. Trevor Ravenscroft, who had become an adept of the doctors, took up the gauntlet in writing the book himself based on the confidences shared by Dr. Stein with him concerning Hitler and his obsession with the talisman of power, the Spear of Longinus. Now, I may not read all of this here. I'm trying to cut down on this because there's just so much. And this goes off into the very interesting and powerful understanding of the Spear of Destiny, and then what Thoth has to say about it, which is even more interesting in my perspective, and so on and so on. But I don't think I'm going there. So let me put on pause again. So we're just going to pick up on some bits and pieces following all of this, just little sections here. So bear in mind, I'm taking them out of the other material, so the context is not entirely in line, but it's just so important to relate these little pieces. So here we go. I asked the question of Thoth. Briefly define the triune of Zoroaster. Thoth, the three converse realities, the Minthos, the Hybron, and the Patos. These are comparative networks of substantiation through which conscious reality operate. Yeah, that explains it just great, doesn't it? I don't know. Okay, we'll go to the next. So I said, this doesn't really give us a grasp on how it is applicable in the Zarathustrian vow. There's something called the Zarathustrian vow. Is the word substantiation, not in the dictionary, meaning, no, it's not substantiation, it's substantiation. Well, I guess it is. Meant to imply the principle of substantialism, which is in the dictionary, the doctrine that there are entities or beings underlying all phenomena as the subjects in which various properties herein. The doctrine that there are entities or beings underlying all phenomena as the subjects in which various properties inhere. Wow. So this is correct. Simplified, see the triune of Zoroaster as three synapses within the reality construct. Synapses are the point of contact between adjacent neurons where nerve impulses are transmitted from one to the other. So I ask, please define the seal of Metatron. The manifest authority of the archangelic sphere of Metatron. What is the Y? Like the letter Y. correlation in William's work, that's William Bueller, with the staff of Osiris. Oh, well, that just goes on with other stuff. I'm not going to do that. Okay. I mean, it's interesting, and it's all interesting, but I'm just trying. Oh, well, wait a minute. Okay, I'm going to have to read this. So I'm asking about the staff of Osiris and the why. Physically, it is the plus minus apex conductor plumb dowser. Esoterically, this is the confluence of the grace karma line, which come together or separates through the welding of the magician, i.e. the initiator. And now I give a note. On the night of September 24th, 1990, led by Anubis, I completed the driving of the staff of Osiris into the Iraqi earth. I then saw a small black statue of bull lion sitting on a table in which I felt to be Saddam Hussein's home, crack in two pieces. This reminded me of when we worked with the disempowering of Noriega, and I saw a dead tree split in two. Hours later, he surrendered to the embassy. Both these men, so Thoth says, like Hitler, are conscious workers in the black arts. I now feel that Hussein's satanic link has been disempowered. Now, this is before he was captured and all of that stuff. That came much later. Although, as a naturally nasty guy, he can still be a great deal of trouble in his black magician skill. But his black magician skill had been broken. Thus, he cannot last for long on his own. However, Hussein is more powerful in this regard than was Noriega. There is a whole group around the former who are into the black arts as well, so there may be more clearing to do there. However, my part is done unless I receive more instructions from Thoth on the matter. Then we go, the logos of the fifth Lord. Now this fifth Lord thing is just super important in the whole picture, and it's come back and forth to me many times, and it's surfacing again in some things that have come forth for me. A gold cartouche was etherically placed around my neck, as Thoth told me that this was the logos of the fifth Lord, whose power came through the archetype and emissary of Osiris. I was told by Thoth that this fifth Lord was returning, and when I asked how, he said through his seed, the seed of Osiris. Then I was told to open several books, one of which was Serpent in the Sky, The High Wisdom of Ancient Egypt by John Anthony West. I opened it to a part of the book I had not yet read, although I've owned this book for several years. On that page, I read, excuse me, my throat is getting very dry. Deep breath, Maya. On this page, I read about a chamber in the Temple of Luxor in Egypt. This temple was built to correlate with the initiation centers of the human body. The chamber mentioned on the page I opened to was called the Holy of Holies. To quote from this page, the sanctuary Schwaller de Lubitz calls the Holy of Holies may be regarded as a germ or seed whose dimensions, proportions, and symbolism contain in resume the finished product. In resume? In resume? R-E-S-U-M-E, I don't know. On the west wall of this sanctuary, which one contained a gold statue of a ram-headed Ammon, there are 5 kings drawn, each portrayed in the presence alternately of Ammon and Min-Ammon. Ammon as as fundicating principle. Measuring these kings, Schwaller de Lubitz found them gradually increasing in size. Each king measures exactly 72 digits, the digits being fractions of the different values of a cubit, each one which is founded upon exact geodesic considerations. The difference between them is determined by the degree of latitude to which the measure pertains. Unquote. In this information, we find the 5 lords, kings, in the chamber of the sea. The 72 is the number of petals, i.e. masters upon the rose mystica. It is through this chamber that I consequently entered the interdimensional realm in which Osiris gave me his staff with which to pierce the plain of Iraq. I know this is not the end of the connection with the Fifth Lord. After the bull lion statue was split in two, I saw a princely being, looking exquisite in satin robes and turban. He was distinctly Arabic. I was told that this was one eminence of the Fifth Lord, the one which was now free to act within the destiny of Iraq. Thus, the Fifth Lord is not just Osiris. It is a multifaceted being, or perhaps consciousness beyond entity form, who has the ability to outpicture within the various culture frames or racial memories. I'm going to pause here for just a moment to say that when we invaded Iraq in Desert Storm and we did all of that and we finally got Hussein, all of that was geared for greed, money, power, but it was much more than that. They wanted to get what now the rainbow apparently had. Well, I shouldn't say that. They wanted to get something, okay? And that I'm not going to talk about here. But all of that said, it was a good thing they did it, on one hand, because it was very, very important that Hussein not be allowed to do what he was planning to do, even though the other guys, the elites, the owl, whatever, wanted things, and they didn't get it either, so it's okay. But that kind of needed to happen, so the hand of the powers that be of the light were on that process, even though it had a dark motive in the conscious realm. Okay, so I'm continuing to read here. Upon awakening on the morning of September 26, 1990, I found this sentence placed firmly in my mind. Under the lake of lakes, near the plain of Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh is the Babylonian Noah. Well, there are differences on that. Some say he wrote about the Babylonian Noah. Some say he was the Babylonian Noah, but it really, in the context of what I'm reading here and talking about, it doesn't matter. Looking in the Britannica, I had to look in the Britannica then, I couldn't Google. I found that ancient Babylonia occupied, quote, southern Mesopotamia between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, modern southern Iraq from around Baghdad to the Persian Gulf. So my questions to Thoth. Did I plant the staff of Osiris on the Lake of Lakes? Thoth says, it is upon the sacred ground that the holy staff of the Fifth Lord, as issued through Osiris, was thrust into the earth by Gilgamesh, another embodiment of the Fifth Lord. So you accomplished this etherically by your reenactment, thereby recreating the movement of the crystallic grid beneath the Lake of Lakes. Now, this gives me a great center of importance here, and I'm not assuming that. There would be a lot of people that were doing this in their dream time, in other ways, in other states of understanding. So it's not that I alone was doing this, but in the context of my personal understanding and energy experience, I was part of that action. So it says, is this Lake of Lakes a dry lake bed? Yes. Is the Lapis Sea channeled by the Emerald Center group? That was a place in San Antonio, Texas, that they channeled some stuff there, where I lived there. And they channeled something about the Lapis Sea. I don't know what they channeled because I don't remember it now. But apparently I saw some corollary, and I'm asking him about that. Is the Lapis Sea channeled by the Emerald Center group the crystallic sea grid of which you speak? And he says it is. Understand that the word lapis in this context is to be embraced in its ancient usage, as well as the lapis lazuli of the actual mineral vein present in the region. This is the lapis of the philosopher's stone, the gem from the crown of Lucifer, which in mineral content is black tourmaline and emerald. I would say that yes, from the standpoint of the archetypification of it, it is, but now I'm saying that it's also, we could see it also as Moldavite, we could see it as the Chinamani stone, we can see it as Shungite, These are all variations. So I say again, before receiving the above information, I had asked for an archetypal reference in regard to my Lake of Lakes message. So then drawing a card from the Gaia Matrix Oracle, the card drawn was the Grail Mother. In Manly P. Hall's Secret Teachings of All Ages, the following passage is given. The lapis elixir, crown of jewels, the archangel Lucifer fell from heaven, Michael, archangel of the sun, and the hidden God of Israel, at the head of the archangelic host, swept down upon Lucifer and his legions of rebellious spirits. During the conflict, Michael, with his flaming sword, struck the flashing lapis elixir from the coronet of his adversary, and the green stone fell through all the celestial rings into the dark and immeasurable abyss. Out of Lucifer's radiant gem was fashioned the Sangreal, or Holy Grail, from which Christ is said to have drunk at the Last Supper. Also of interest in regard to my question as to how the fifth Lord would return, the answer given being through his seed, Secret Teaching states the Holy Grail may also be the seed pod, so frequently employed in the ancient mysteries as an emblem of germination and resurrection. And if the cup-like shape of the Grail is to be derived from the flower, it signifies the regeneration, the spiritualization of the generative forces in man. Something else I wanted to say about this, but I can't remember. Oh, well. Okay, now from the Grail Matrix Oracle, the definition of Grail Mother, and this was the card I drew at random when I was asking about the Lake of Lakes in Thoth's message. So from the Gaia Matrix Oracle, Grail Mother, a female being rising upward holds her hands in a prayer mudra. Between her hands, at her heart, issues rainbow-colored subtle fluids that spiral around her body like a heart. She is the awareness within the heart. She is crowned with both the sun disk and moon horns. She is within the cauldron where a red fiery triangle and a blue watery triangle seek to unite at the base. Great energies issue from the cauldron in one direction to the Grail's mother's left. The original meaning of Galilee is a circle of water or fluid referring to the qualities in the circulatory system, unquote. Grail Matrix continues with various names given to the heart in ancient times, one being the Garden of Eden. It's between the Tigris-Euphrates River and that one of the Garden of Eden plains exists. Thoth says there were two, of course, the fallen and the infall. In obvious correlation to Noah Gilgamesh, the Grail Mother says, quote, for the ark to be a vehicle in the flooding circulation of exchanges of the world, limits must be accepted. The sacrifice of the Great One is to set limits against the infinite so that the finite can be created. Then the created creature is to build her own vehicle for heart-mind unity to return to the infinite, unquote. This would seem to synthesize with the vault symbology that Thoth gives me. And the Grail Mother continues, quote again from Rowena, in the archetype image, the water essences of the blue triangle fuses with the fire essence of the red triangle. The vapor from this union is the atmosphere which sustains the Grail Mother. Solve and coagulate. I'm sorry. Exercise. Solve and coagulate are the alchemical terms relevant now. Use your higher mind to find the way across the mystic river. Increase your faith and soul intention to being about the crossing. Dissolve and build. That's the end of the quote of the Grail Mother. Thoth states, under the Lake of Lakes is the Sea of Lapis. It was here that Gilgamesh sustained the earth through the quickening of the Grail Matrix herein, after the period of the Great Flood. He sealed away the blue dragon power, which is now to be awakened as a guardian of the threshold. And all of this with, the Garden of Eden and all of that, the coin that I saw Saint Germain flip last year. On one side was the Bennu bird, the egg, the Benben stone of the Bennu bird, and the bird. On the other side were the rivers that conjoined to form the rivers. Well, they were the rivers of Eden. So I go now to another question. Is the meteorite shard Moldavite. No, it is of a substance that we regard as higher constituted emerald. However, Moldavite can attune to this etheric resonance, as well as earth, emerald, and lapis lazuli. Well, again, I see all meteorite stones also, meteorite stones being attuned to it. And I'm especially interested in the correlation with the Chinamati stone and the shungite, but that's for a whole nother video, not for this. Okay, when the stone prism is accomplished, so the lapis elixir shard will be given a signal of piezoelectric generation, which will in turn be aligned with the archangel stone beneath the shore of Glastonbury. This will unite the blue and the red dragons through the etheric body of the blue pharaoh, etherically set above ethers, the earth ethers through the compass rose mission. A whole nother thing, forget that. This just gets into so much. Okay, so I'm just not going to, I'm going to skip down here because I see I'm just going on, and you guys are probably have something else to do with your day. So it's all very interesting, but it doesn't relate directly to what I'm leading up to with this video, to go to another video that I wish to create. So I'm just going to skip it. It's all about the meteorite stone and all of this. But down here, in reference to the logos of the fifth lord, which I saw as a gold cartouche containing hieroglyphics, and bearing in mind that the fifth lord's first entry into earth was through Osiris, the Sirius mystery has this interesting correlation. I quote from the Sirius mystery. The oldest and simplest form of the name of Osiris, we are told, is a hieroglyph of a throne and an eye. The eye aspect of Osiris is thus fundamental. The meaning of the Egyptian hieroglyphs and name of Isis and Osiris were unknown to the earliest dynastic Egyptians themselves, and the names and signs appear to have pre-dynastic origin, which means around or before 3200 BC. In other words, 5,000 years ago at least. There has been no living traditional explanation for the meanings of the names and signs for Isis and Osiris since at least 2800 BC, at the very least, unquote. And in an earlier paragraph, Isis and Osiris' star identities are given as, again to quote from the Sirius mystery, the companion of Isis and Osiris, the chief Egyptian god. The companion of Isis was Osiris, the chief Egyptian god. The companion of the constellation of the Great Dog, which includes Sirius, was the constellation of Orion. Since Isis is equated with Sirius, the companion of Isis must be equated equally with the companion of Sirius. Osiris is thus equated as on occasion with the constellation of Orion, unquote. It was the Egyptian archetype god Anubis, the jackal-headed dog, protector of journeys, that guided me to Osiris. Now, Thoth has said that Anubis is another aspect of him, actually, and many people equate it with Osiris, but, it's kind of all archetypified relationships kind of stuff, so we'll just leave it at that. Anubis guided me as well to the sacred place in Iraq. In the Sirius mystery, Temple states that, Temple is the author, Anubis was also variously represented as the son of Nethos by Osiris, and as being really identical with Osiris himself. A famous tale has him embalm the corpse of Osiris. I'm sorry, my tongue is getting too twisted at this point. Osiris was known as Anubis, though at two other locations he was known as Anubis. And then two more familiar names appear. Zarathustra, also known as Zarathustra, is known to have postulated two basic divine principles: Ahura Mazda, the principle of light and goodness, and Ahriman, the principle of evil and darkness. Anubis was the circle dividing the light from the dark in Egyptian religion. That's the end of all the quotes, and I say, thus it is understandable that Anubis, another form of Osiris, would not only lead me to the latter, but into the land which is now being torn between light and dark. It's going on and on, so I'm going to skip all of that. In these quotations, a distinct relationship is formed with Thoth's statement to me that the fifth Lord was coming again to earth through his seed, Osiris' seed, and then finding the Holy of Holies chamber in Luxor, representing the generative power to contain the five kings, lords, in several previous issues of Temple Doors, Source and Temple Doors. Sirius has been revealed as not only one of the three stars in the Trinity, but as the recalibrated Stargate, or balance point that Lucifer dislodged in his war in heaven. Therefore, Sirius contains trapped energies from this battle. It would thus not be stretching things to perceive Gilgamesh's heavy star, the one and the same meteorite shard expelled from heaven's gate, as a piece of the star Sirius, or what became Sirius. And that's something I'm alluding to that I didn't read to you because it's just on and on and on. Okay, let's see if there's any more here that I want to read. I'm going to pause again for a moment. Okay, we're coming down to the finish line of this particular video that leads up to new things that I want to speak about. That is new to me. And that will be another video. So Thoth really wanted me to include a reading of the Dynamic of Existence, the Metatronic Fulcrum, which is still in a 1990 issue time period. And I'm just going to dive in here and read it. It's nowhere as long as the Zarathustra. Believe me, it's just a page and a bit. So here we go. Many years ago, I wrote and published a book entitled Translations of the Golden Rod. That was many years ago from 1990. After I had accessed the Ormid Kaaba information, and I have not read you that, it's in here somewhere, but we're going to go back to it in this. It's going to talk about it. William Bueller and I were discussing a chapter in this book entitled The Great Wheel. William told me that it answered several major questions for him in regard to a wheel dynamic he had been working with for some time. He then informed me that it correlated with the ancient Hebrew understanding of creation of souls, which was the great wheel concept in my book. In the Hebrew version, the point of interchange between inner and outer levels of the ethereal field through which souls come into life is represented by two figures, each seated on a throne, their arms raised in the air. Between these forms is a forearm, palm up, thumb extended upward. This hieroglyph depicts the pivotal node through which a soul is presented via the higher forms of its soul grouping into the lower ethers. As William was relating all this to me, I experienced a vision in which I saw two throned male figures with a disattached forearm in the center. They looked very much within the concept of Godhead representatives, complete with long white beards. Above their heads was an image of the Kaaba and the Ormid. Now, I just have to say, the Kaaba is, of course, the black stone, the dark void, the captured reality. And the Ormid is what he calls the cube of stars, the Metatronic completion, fullness, on and on. You know, you get the picture. So above their heads was an image of the Kaaba and the Ormid with a figure 8 or infinity sign attaching them. I asked William to draw this for me, which he did. However, in his version, the men are depicted as hieroglyphs rather than full forms, as I saw. And my fellows were very large, with the dynamic above their heads about 1/3 of their size. Even so, in my vision, it was made clear that the point of ingress, egress was at the center of the 8. So I can't show you this image here, but it's because it's in the book and it'd be too hard to do that. But the figure 8, the limnoscape, at the very center where it crosses, the limnoscape crosses, that is where the ingress egress is made. Now, on one side of the limnoscape is the Kaaba, and on the other side is the Ormid, or the cube of stars. I realized that this was the dynamic which activated the full Metatronic spiral through the entire tree of life, not only quickening this activation within present humanity, but allowing a transference of polar forms between two distinctly opposite universes. the universe of the Kabbalah and the universe of the Ormid. Previously, when humanity has interacted with opposites, it has been within its own form field. But this new dynamic opens the gate to interplane correspondence far beyond the sense nature. If the figure 8 is stood upright, it can be seen as the inside mechanism of the Metatronic spiral as it displays its double cone vector from above to below. It also forms the inner grid for the Imstra, the Metatronic. Oh, I finally found the name, what the Imstra meant. I knew I wrote it somewhere and I could not find it. I'm so excited. I'm going to be able to use it now. It's what Imstra stands for. Here it is. Metatronic Star Tech Redemption Apex. So you can understand why I wanted to abbreviate it, but I definitely want that. I'm going to write it down and use it in my next texts on that. Metatronic Star Tech Redemption Apex, which is a mouthful. Okay, this is the light molecule within the DNA. This light, I say within the DNA. That's really not correct. It transfers within the DNA. But I would say now, from my perspective now, it's not within. It's a quantum field. So it's within a lot of things. I mean, it's everywhere. It's like, it's everywhere. Okay. This light molecule, as has been previously stated, is being newly gained within the human crystallic structure. Well, newly gained in its operational form. It is the missing link to our star-engendered origins, giving us once again access to these divine patterns of being. In transference of waves of divine codings from the Kaaba inverted to the Ormid outraying universe fields, so we, as center point commanders on our starship thrones, will be able to truly assume the role of co-creators, the new Elohim. We will be creating new amalgams, mixtures of both principles or universes within our succeeding generations, thus enabling them to truly go where no man has gone before on star techs, beyond imagining. All punning aside, I am informed by my sources that a star tech is a lattice of star energy created by a non-lateral gravity system, i.e., outside polarity, containing no opposite poles, interacting on high-state star emissions from the center of the living lights, archangelic resonances within star matter. A non-lateral gravity system is created when two or more pairs of positive-negative magnetic fields, each from different star valencies, the combining power of an atom, or universes forming a greater valency, canceling out dualistic functions within the combined dynamic. I will spare you with any further meta-science on this subject for now, but say that by doing away with polar opposites, at least within this format, no dimension or universe would be inaccessible to us. Now, this is not, in a way, it's become non-dualistic. It's a non-dualistic format, but it is not existing in a non-dualistic universe. It is a way of achieving non-dualism as a vehicle of transit. Okay, to continue. Thoth, what keeps this world's inhabitants within such small circles of evolution and being is the very nature of opposition. This is not to say that polarity does not serve essential purposes, for indeed it does, but beyond this Garden of Adam-Eve compliance lies the field of Adaroth. There in the heart of the lion, 666, and the heart of the lamb, 999, are at one. After receiving Thoth's comment on the field of Adaroth, I was able to find mention of it. Oh, I don't know if we're going to read all that. Let me see. It's interesting, but no, I'm going to skip that. I'm going to skip that. Let's see, because it's all in the field of Adaroth. Let's see. I'm almost at the end. I want to see if there's anything more on this part that I should. Okay, in summary, the field of Adaroth represents an open-ended universe in which all existential, EXISTENTIAL. I know what it means, but I just can't say it. Utility is formed by one absolute and not by a product of entropic devaluation, i.e., breaking down of form into smaller and lesser divinely aligned prototypes of the original archetype. The open-ended concept implies that every creation is allowed infinite creativity without loss of the one absolute or master archetypal imprint within. In other words, accessing the limitless creations that complexity provides via genetics, for instance, without sacrificing the pure form of the mother-father origin that is indelibly inscribed upon the cornerstone of each soul's most essential being, which I might add, right now, I'm just talking me now, is to be found in the planetary genius, at least within the circumference of our world order consciousness frame. To continue, in our present construct, i.e. the Adam-Eve compliance, whenever we move away from simplicity toward the lure of infinite possibilities complexity provides, so we lose our essential being, become strained through the sackcloth of the baser forms we create. In the field of Ardath, we will raise the creative factor to our evalency with all universes, thus bringing humanity into the mainstream of the one absolute, which is centered consciousness and outward movement. We must go within the intra-logos of creation in order to move away from our bonding to entropy. And when we accomplish this, so we will be free to pursue without being pursued, to bend without breaking, to hold without crushing. We will be counted, in the words of the ancients, among the immortals. Excuse me, more water. Now, this field of Ardath certainly has the scent of the Atosic universe. It is a field of compliance with the Atosic universe, not the Atosic universe itself. I do believe, I truly, truly do believe that I may be through with this video. Yes, I think so. Oh, wow. Okay, that was quite a read, and I'm sure it was quite a listen. And I started talking faster and faster. I'm sorry about that. My side is literally hurting from all that talk. So this video may be something you want to go over several times. I don't know. Maybe you won't. But I needed to do it to lead up to the next video that I'm going to do that is very likely not going to be anywhere near as long, but it's kind of the punchline of why you needed to hear this one first. So I'm going to conclude and thank you all very much for listening, if indeed you actually listened to all of it. Thank you, thank you.